Our Montour County Commissioners have been so good to us in setting this up and giving us the use of the courthouse. We also thank the Sheriff's Department for giving us the security. There's something about having that guy downstairs that just makes you feel good. And also Clayton Merrill Jr., who has provided us with our microphone system tonight. And let me know if you're not hearing things, raise your hand, do something so that we can have people speak up or I can repeat the question. We encourage you to participate tonight in asking your own questions by writing your questions on the cards you've been given, or later you'll get a chance to come over to that microphone on the far end and ask a question if you wish to. We're limiting our questions to one candidate at a time, so please write one question, one candidate, one card, if you will do that, please. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our candidates for Montour County District Attorney. They are from left to right, Republican Rebecca Warren and Democrat Timothy Bowers. Over in the jury box, our newsmen are John Finnerty from the Daily Item and Matthew James from WPGM Radio. Our program outline is the following. We'll begin with 1-minute opening comments by each candidate in the order drawn beforehand. Then our newsmen will ask their questions in a rotating order. Then you, our audience, that'll be 1-minute response time also, and then you, our audience, with your questions, that also be a 1-minute response time. If you choose to ask your question at the microphone, you'll be allowed 15 seconds in which to ask your question. It must be in the form of a question, not comments or opinions. We're only interested in your question. We ask all of our questioners to give us questions that aren't slanderous or disrespectful or inappropriate in any way. We will not honor questions like that. We will close with closing comments that are 2 to 3 minutes, again in an order drawn beforehand. And we have timers, Gail Zimmer and Sarah Finn, who will ring a bell when the time has expired. You can finish your sentence when the bell rings, or the thought that you have, but ask that you honor our times. And also CCN is here recording us, and I have listings of when it will be replayed. Saturday 2:30, Sunday 8:30 p.m., Monday 9 a.m., Monday 3 p.m. I'll keep those up here in case you would like to look at them. Are there any questions? All right, then we will begin with our opening comments, and Rebecca Warren will be our first speaker.
Thank you. Good evening. I am Rebecca Warren. I'm a local attorney who's been practicing in this area for 20 years. My husband and I are proud to be raising our family in this wonderful community. We have lived in Montour County for 13 years, and I opened an office in Danville 8 years ago, and I'm happy to say it's been very successful. Notably, I am the only DA candidate who has any prosecutorial experience. For years, I served as an assistant district attorney in Columbia County. I was the author of the first Columbia County child abuse protocol, in addition to conducting my daily prosecutorial functions. Within the last 2 years, I've served as assistant district attorney of Montour County. If you elect me as your district attorney, you don't have to guess what you're getting. I have a history and a reputation of being prepared, fair, aggressive, loyal, fiscally responsible, both professionally and personally, dedicated, a problem solver, and a very hard worker. I welcome the opportunity to serve you as your next district attorney. Thank you.
Mr. Bowers.
In an era of economic trouble, of crippling budget deficits, and of budget cuts in our state government, the first responsibility of every single public servant must be to take less and give back more. I'm Tim Bowers, and as your district attorney, I will do just that. I have a plan to take less. I have a plan to save taxpayers $400,000 during my term in office by working with Harrisburg to cut the paycheck for this job back to where it was before the full-time DA boondoggle. Additionally, I will give back more. I will work tirelessly to modernize prosecution in Montour County for the first time in decades. We are not a leader here. We don't have the programs that get people away from alcohol, away from drugs, back to work and back to families that all of our neighbors do. As your district attorney, I will work tirelessly to ensure that we have second chances for folks like veterans who need special treatment, special consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now have our immediate questions, and we'll begin with Mr. Finnerty asking Ms. Warren.
Ms. Warren, if elected, what would be the first thing you would change in the DA's office, if anything?
It's a very good question. I think with any position, as a new person in an office, you have to assess what works and what doesn't work. We have a lot of positives in our current DA's office. I know that one relatively new, the drug court will be the new court as soon as Columbia County's is tested and tried, and they'll be starting it down here in Montour County. So that's one of the first things that I want to assist in doing. I've attended the drug court in other local counties, including Columbia County. They're fabulous. It's something that we do definitely need here, but the good news is it's already approved. We just need to put it in order, and that will be one of my first actions when I take office after the first of the year.
Mr. James to Mr. Bowers.
The top prosecutor's job involves keeping order and decency in society. What part does a candidate's own personal credibility, own personal conduct play in that? You know, does that is that something the voters deserve to, you know, credible? To give the candidate credibility, in other words.
Well, absolutely. The credibility of a prosecutor is absolutely key to being effective. And I have an excellent reputation among my colleagues for being workable, for coming to sensible, sound conclusions. That's the philosophy I carry in as an advocate for courts like drug court, for veterans court, about which my opponent is silent treatment court. So, in fact, credibility is the key issue. And in terms of credibility, I think your commitment to the job is relevant. Are you committed to the job at any price or only at a high price? I'm committed to reducing the price for the job. That, I think, is the ultimate in credibility.
We'll continue with Mr. James, who will now question Ms. Warren.
Same question to you.
I'm sorry, could you repeat it?
Yeah, I rambled, sorry. The job involves keeping order in society, and do the voters have a right to a DA whose personal conduct is spotless? I mean, that definitely plays a part, I would think, in the, you know, in the credibility that the constituents looking at that are going to say this candidate is not credible because their own life is not credible.
Okay. Yes, I believe credibility is important in any walk of life. No one, of course, is perfect, but we all have standards that we're supposed to adhere to. And I think that, again, if you look at my history and reputation in the community and in the law, in the legal community and the law enforcement community for the last 20 years, you will see someone who has a record of integrity, of honesty, of credibility, of working well with other individuals, of not being afraid to speak their mind and being direct. At the end of the day, you need to be able to look at yourself in the mirror and know that what you accomplished that day was the right thing, that you did the best that you could under the circumstances that were presented to you, and that you made the right decision. And I believe that I can look in the mirror every night and say that I did the best possible job. I was honest. I try to live my life according to the values that my parents instilled in me. And yes, credibility is important. I believe I have it.
Mr. Finnerty to Mr. Bowers.
Mr. Bowers, I guess I'd like you to explain why you are focusing on the issue of the full-time DA position, or I guess the status of the full-time DA.
The question is about a full-time position.
The question is one about being a responsible public servant in a time of economic distress. Our taxpayers are overburdened. We've seen huge cuts to important programs like the basic education subsidy. And what we're doing here in Montour County is putting $400,000 into the pocket of a lawyer. No one has been able to explain to me how that keeps a community safer, how it deters crime, because it doesn't. Police and sheriff's deputies on the streets deter crime. They keep our communities safe. What you have right now is essentially you're vetting two lawyers to represent you as the taxpayers. My opponent's retainer for that service is $400,000 higher than mine. I'd like her to look all of you in the eye and tell you what you're getting for it.
Mr. Finnerty, you'll continue with Ms. Warren?
I guess, can you respond to that?
I would love to respond to that. The truth of the matter is, the full-time versus part-time DA position is as simple as 1, 2, 3. First of all, the position is full-time. The law specifically says that the district attorney for this county shall be full-time. And once it is full-time, it cannot be changed. I have the law with me this evening. It's highlighted. You're welcome to come up and see it afterwards, and I will talk to you about it as well. Secondly, the legislators have tried to change this, most recently last year, because they're the only ones who can change it. No district attorney, no county commissioner can change it. That bill failed to succeed. It is also, number 3, cheaper for you to have a full-time attorney. Why? Because under the law, Montour County gets reimbursed 65% of a full-time district attorney's salary by the state legislature. So the Montour County taxpayers' bill is only 35%, which is roughly $55,000. If you want a part-time DA to fight increasing crime, then you're going to pay them $10,000 more per year because you have to pay 100% of the bill.
Mr. James to Mr. Bowers.
Could you give me some listing of law enforcement agencies and so forth that would support your campaign, that are supporting it?
My campaign is based on support of the people and justice for the taxpayer. At the same time, I've spoken with the chiefs of both of our municipal police departments, I've spoken with the sheriff. I've made it clear that despite the fact that I intend to work with the legislature, and incidentally I have bipartisan support. I've spoken with Representative Kurt Mosser, I've spoken with Representative Eugene DePasquale, candidate for Auditor General, who are both shocked and appalled by what we're paying for the level of caseload we have, that I will give them full service. My view is, as a public servant, you don't come in 20 hours a week because the taxpayers are only giving you $60,000 a year. You come in and you do the job till the job is done. I know in speaking with one law enforcement officer, it was crucial to him that I be available for preliminary hearings because the past DA, when he was part-time, didn't do that. I assured him I'm available for every need that our law enforcement professionals have anytime they want. And my philosophy is cut the pay for the job, but you get it done. 100%, and you're 100% available to and behind them.
Mr. James to Ms. Warren.
Again, the law enforcement supporting you, and is that important?
Yes, I have the endorsement of the Mahoning Township Police Officers Association. I've received other endorsements, such as the mayor's and also the Republican committee locally. I am anticipating that I'm going to be receiving another important law enforcement endorsement by the end of this week. I have spoken with law enforcement. I have worked with law enforcement, and they know me as a tough prosecutor and someone who will get the job done. When I spoke to people in law enforcement regarding whether they wanted a full or a part-time district attorney, the answer, without a doubt, was full-time. They want someone who is available 24/7. They don't want you to be in your private practice, tied up in court with a client and not able to answer an important question. This year alone in Danville, I've worked with the Wesley Weiss murder case since day one. We've had a suspicious death out at the Montour Preserve. I got called out during the night. You need to be available 24/7, and if you have a private practice, it's going to make it difficult. I would also like to comment once more on the full-time, part-time. It keeps coming up. The Constitution of Pennsylvania, Section 27, says that no law shall increase or diminish a public officer's salary after his election or appointment. So, folks, next 4 years, it's definitely full-time. So pick the best person for the job.
Mr. Finnerty to Mr. Bowers.
I believe you were talking a little bit about the problem-solving courts, like the Veterans Courts and DUI courts and things. Can you explain your strategy for getting those in place?
First of all, I think we need to work aggressively and constructively with our neighbors across the river in Northumberland County. The question was put to the commissioner candidates earlier this evening. The Northumberland County courts, my colleague Tony Rosini, the DA in Northumberland County, and the judges have done an absolutely phenomenal job in identifying the sources of money that get you started. They've implemented them. They've gone through all the hard work of figuring out how to put them in place. So we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We can use their guidance. So my primary, in addition to that, we need to have a strong relationship with the commissioners and a strong relationship with the President Judge. I have an excellent working relationship with the President Judge, and I have had always a good working relationship with Judge-elect Gary Norton. I think we can form a team that's interested in progressive, responsible treatment of problems in our community that's cost-effective. These programs have saved our neighbors money, and at the same time, they get people back to family, back to jobs. And I think the Veterans Court will be the first priority. Thank you.
And Mr. Finnerty, continue with Ms. Warren.
I know you mentioned, I think the drug court's coming. You think drug court's coming?
Approved.
Do you think there's room for further problem-solving courts, or?
There may be. My concern, of course, is creating multiple levels of bureaucracy. Big government is never good. It costs money. It creates complexities. I certainly applaud our veterans. I appreciate everyone who has fought for the freedom of our country. Interestingly enough, the Pennsylvania Lawyer magazine earlier this year addressed the issue of veterans courts. And you're probably not going to be shocked to hear this, but most veterans coming back are law-abiding. They don't have any trouble reintegrating, but there are some that do. 9.3% of the veterans are involved in the criminal system nationwide. For what? Substance abuse generally, drugs and alcohol. We already have an ARD program in place to handle DUI-related matters, first-time offenses. A lot of veterans would fall under that. And we also have our drug court that's going to be coming into effect at the beginning of the year. So they can also go through that program. Do we need a specific veterans court? It's something that should be considered, but I think it's better to use the resources that we have so that we're not creating bureaucracy, not costing the taxpayers more money. And Mr. Rezague up at the Veterans Affairs Office is wonderful. I'm sure he'd provide mentors through the drug court system for veterans.
Mr. James, Mr. Bowers.
Tell me about your biggest mistake and what you've learned from it.
I think my biggest mistake in many respects as a lawyer was not finding a good partner at some time, remaining solo. Because when you have a good partner, you have someone you can bounce ideas off of, you can check yourself, you can make sure that you're ready to go. As district attorney, I'm not going to make that same mistake. I'm going to make sure I forge very, very close partnerships. Tony Rosini across the river. I'm going to forge a very close relationship with the candidate-elect in Columbia County so that I have the level of collegiality available to me to gain mutual support, to be able to bounce ideas off one another, and to make sure that we're keeping things on track.
Mr. James, continue with Ms. Warren.
Same question, again.
When I was younger, I was a witness to a bullying incident. And as I sit here at the age of almost 45, it still sticks in my mind because it made such an impact on me. And the reason it did is because I didn't speak up. I was shy when I was younger, and that always bothered me. And so I used that as a method to assert myself on behalf of other people who are being victimized, who are being hurt, who are being belittled. And in the back of my mind, I'm always trying to help the next person.
Mr. Finnerty to Mr. Bowers.
Mr. Bowers, did you resign as Northumberland County Solicitor to avoid being terminated for failing to file an appeal of unemployment benefits for 2 fired prison guards?
No, I did not. Now, I must caution you that my answer to this must be limited as there's an attorney-client privilege issue involved. If Northumberland County waives that attorney-client privilege issue, I will be happy to comment fully at some subsequent time. However, I was not under threat of termination at the point of my departure. I made my departure because I realized that the county in which I practiced law for 14 years, the county in which I saw an opportunity to make a positive contribution, a county that in fact needs one, because responsible progressive prosecution has been neglected for decades, was where I needed to be. And so I voluntarily left, and I will remind everyone that after that I was asked to stay on by the commissioners, particularly by Commissioner Clausy, to mind certain litigation matters and ongoing things. The commissioners continued to repose their trust in me to handle sophisticated issues, and I performed well for them. However, it became clear to me that my full-time efforts needed to be in this county, where I feel at home.
Mr. Finnerty, continue with Ms. Warren.
I don't have any more questions for Ms. Warren, sorry.
We have some other questions, so maybe this is a good time for us to entertain some of our questions. We do have one for both candidates. The Danville Borough Council has proposed, and the Neighborhood Watch Group has recommended, that rental inspections be instituted in Danville. They contend that crime will be reduced by this program. Do you agree? Support yes or no answers with facts and figures. Are you comfortable prosecuting any crime which may be brought to light through rental inspections? There's a lot there. Did you both understand the questions? All right. Ms. Warren, would you address it first?
Yes, I've been involved with the Neighborhood Watch Group since its inception several years ago, and I purchased books for everyone. It's called Fixing Broken Windows, and it was a study that was done in the major cities in the United States: New York, cleaning up the subway system, LA, Newark, and that book basically supported through investigation and statistics that if you have rundown rental properties, the types of tenants that you attract bring a lot of problems for the police and for the community. And so I do wholeheartedly believe that we need to be very aware of our buildings that are around us. We need to be aware of their condition. We need to be aware of the occupancy, and a landlord-tenant law would help to support that. Now, again, I'm not a big proponent of government. I don't like the big brother mentality, but there has to be reasonable and logical steps taken in order to ensure the safety of our community, and I do believe that a landlord-tenant law would be helpful in that respect.
Mr. Bowers?
As a prosecutor, I would have some serious concerns about the proposal. While it is certainly true that gang recruiters look for rundown property, and it's certainly true that there's a correlation between owner occupancy, tenant occupancy, and crime, I don't know that this is the proper way to approach it. First of all, if we're using code officers as regular adjuncts to police, they become subject to heightened search and seizure requirements under constitutional law, which may invalidate the evidence they discover. Second, I have a deep concern for their safety. If we're putting them deliberately in an environment where we suspect crime may be occurring, they don't have sidearms, they don't have body armor, they don't have the training that our law enforcement professionals do to properly execute search warrants. So I think that serious discussion would need to be had about whether we want to endanger our trained code enforcement officials, who are excellent at what they do, by putting them in a role that isn't meant for them.
Before we ask the next question, if anybody has cards, to pass them to the middle. If you've written something down and it hasn't been collected, anybody? Okay. Oh, there's one. Okay. All right. This is for Ms. Warren. How did you become involved in Montour County's suit against the state?
I had been working as an attorney for the prison board, and the commissioners approached me and indicated that there was a problem with regard to reimbursement for the district attorney's position, and they asked me if I would join them in the fight against Harrisburg, which was going to be a David versus Goliath task. And I told them that I felt it was wrong and that I would most certainly join them in that fight because, again, we're supposed to do the right thing. And when you see an injustice, you're supposed to address it. So I offered my services for free, filed the lawsuit, and I'm pleased to report that after we brought attention to this matter, which was one of our main goals, we received all of the reimbursement for the years 2006 through and including 2009, and there is now a new funding source through the Criminal Justice Enhancement Act that is actually bringing money into the coffers so that Harrisburg now has sufficient funds to pay the reimbursement to Montour County. So I was proud to work with the commissioners on that.
And Mr. Bowers, why do you disagree with the Montour County Commissioner's decision to sue the state?
First of all, I think that when you're looking at economic issues, the last thing you can afford to do is alienate other folks in government. You have to cooperate. You have to work together. And, you know, it's not as simple as we sued him and got the money, because that's not what happened. We sued him and we got shot down in the Commonwealth Court. Told we were patently wrong. What's more, you've heard some somewhat inaccurate information this evening. If you've read the Danville News today, you know that for 2010 and 2011, Harrisburg has not ponied up the money to reimburse us for this full-time job. So we're left footing the bill. And you know what? There's sort of a shell game that I've heard played tonight, and I've heard it played by other local politicians. Oh, it's local money or it's state money. Ladies and gentlemen, every last penny of it is our money. Every last penny of it could go somewhere more responsible than in a lawyer's pocket. We know Governor Tom Corbett doesn't value this because this year he didn't fund it. Thank you.
May I respond to that, please?
Well, you can sneak it in another question.
Okay, because I would like to set forth the true facts. Okay, thank you.
This is to both of you, and you may speak first.
Okay.
It won't take you long to answer.
So I'll
if you
answer the
want.
other one, too. I got you.
All right. How long have you lived in Montour County?
Oh, that's very easy. I've lived in Montour County for 13 years. And now, I would like to say that the lawsuit in Harrisburg was not a failed lawsuit. It is actually still pending. And the judge who heard our case, with the 3 commissioners present, was very sympathetic to our plight and directed the other individuals involved in that lawsuit to find the funding for Montour County. We have been reimbursed all the way through and including 2009. It is true that we have not yet received the reimbursement for 2010-2011. I did not say that we did. The funding is there in the Criminal Justice Enhancement Act. I would also like to say, since I have a little bit of time, I've saved the county over $200,000 in the last several years, and that was through volunteering to review the law libraries. I saved $11,000 per year, and that continues, by recommending different publications, but still having the same books available to the attorneys. I donated office equipment to the county when they need it without request. I offered my services for free in the fight against Harrisburg. I've refused an increase every year as the prison board attorney, even though it was offered to me. And I've made a recommendation that the housing contract be changed, and we were able to save a year's worth of money, $200,000.
Mr. Bowers, you have, I think, a couple here, if you'll bear with us. Also, how long have you been a resident of Montour County? That's one of them.
I've been a resident of Montour County for a bit over a year, and I have practiced law here for, well, I'm in my 15th year. My entire career has been here.
The next one, you said that you plan to help veterans. How and what do you plan to do exactly, and why do you think that this is important?
Well, first of all, I think it's important because, according to U.S. Census data, we have approximately 1,730 veterans living in Montour County, about 10% of our population. That's the same percentage of veteran population that you see in Northumberland County. I feel very deeply that these folks have sacrificed for us. They've sacrificed most recently through repeated recycled tours in Mesopotamia and Central Asia. And they come back with serious problems. They come back with post-traumatic stress disorder. They come back with closed head injury. They come back with adrenaline overproduction. They come back homeless and jobless. I don't think it's a matter of waiting to see how many veterans need help. I think it's a matter of helping veteran number one. And if the problem with veteran number one isn't simply alcohol or drugs, I don't feel comfortable putting that veteran in the normal criminal justice system or putting that veteran in jail. I want to make sure that that veteran gets teamed up. And this is a no-cost option because every resource, every single person is already on the payroll or already funded. Northumberland County added their Veterans Court at zero cost to the taxpayer.
Would you like to start moving over to the microphone if you have a question? And I'll go ahead and ask another one of Mr. Bowers while you're stampeding over to the microphone. Mr. Bowers, will you give the extra $100,000 back to the county if the state legislature doesn't approve a change?
Well, I'm reluctant to put it in the general county coffer as the county voted to make this position full-time in the first place. If I'm elected, I will see to it that we arrange some sort of contribution to appropriate charities or to fund startup money that makes a serious investment in the future by making sure we have some money available to get these new courts, these progressive courts, these effective cost-fighting courts in place.
I just want to remind everyone that they have only 15 seconds, and we're a non-bashing organization. And with that said, go ahead.
Mr. Bowers, you've been endorsed by Derek Martz, a convicted child predator. You obviously have no control over who endorses you, but you can refuse to accept that endorsement. Have you refused his endorsement? And if not, does that mean you'll accept anybody's endorsement, including other convicted criminals?
Well, that's a good question. I'm glad you've given me the opportunity to talk about that. I think people have a right to speak as they want. They have a right to say, I think this person's a good candidate or a bad candidate. And you know what? I've had a conversation with Mr. Martz. His convictions are still under appeal. I explained to him that if I'm elected, it may well be my duty to defend those convictions to the utmost, and I will certainly do so. I think another thing that's relevant with Derek Martz is, I don't know, I haven't read his transcripts, I don't know what happened in the case, but I know that Derek Martz was charged with numerous felonies, numerous misdemeanor offenses, and I believe his only conviction was a single misdemeanor. Ladies and gentlemen, to paraphrase Churchill, that is a colossal prosecutorial failure. Our police worked hard. They deserved a better result than that, and I will work hard to ensure that we have those better results in the future.
Next.
My question's for both candidates.
Okay.
Because of all the recent scandals concerning judges, I would like to know, has either of you ever been sued for malpractice, or have you had any disciplinary action taken or pending now?
Yes.
I've never been sued for malpractice, and I've never had any disciplinary action.
As Mike Dennehy said when asked that question back in the spring, if you do this long enough, something happens. There's currently pending an alleged malpractice action against me. There's no complaint. The folks involved are attempting to work out the underlying cause of action amicably, and with any luck, that'll be the end of it. One way or the other, my concern first and foremost is that their issues are addressed. As far as disciplinary action, not only have I not had disciplinary action taken against me, but I have recently been appointed to be a hearing committee member serving the Pennsylvania Disciplinary Board. As a committee member, it would be my responsibility to hear cases of alleged misconduct and to recommend appropriate sanctions. I think another component of your question is also important. Have you ever sued a client? I have never sued a client. I mean, that says something about my relationship with my clients and my career as a lawyer.
Thank you. The next person?
My question is for Mr. Bauer. Dick Snodgrass was fired as a school business manager, but because of the way his contract is written, he will continue to get paid about $80,000 a year for the next 2 years. As the school's lawyer, why did you recommend approval of this contract?
All right, well, first of all, again, we have some issues of attorney-client privilege, but I'm going to do my very best to answer you. First of all, what you should know is the Snodgrass contract went through numerous negotiated revisions. It did not always come in its current form. In the end, the school board and Mr. Snodgrass came to an arrangement that they found mutually acceptable. Now, there's a fact about the contract that has not been widely publicized for whatever reason. Mr. Snodgrass's contract does not give him the absolute ability to remain. If he is not doing his job, if he commits misconduct, if he neglects duty, if he violates the school laws of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, there is a clause allowing termination. I would never, under any circumstances, recommend that any agency or any client of mine hire any employee without the ability to terminate for failure to do a job.
Other questions?
My question is for Attorney Bowers. I'm just curious, the caseload of Montour County versus some of the similar counties next door, Northumberland County, Columbia County. Is it a larger caseload comparatively in that we would need a full-time district attorney, or can you clear that up for us?
Thank you for that question. According to the AOPC, the Administrative Office of Pennsylvania Courts, during the years 2005 through 2009, we've had on average 175 new cases a year. We have on average precisely 1.2 jury trials a year. It's a really light caseload. Next door, Northumberland County, with 5 times the population, they have nearly 10 times the caseload. And I will note that over that period of time, and that's the one I looked at because that's when the salary jumped to $100,000, there's been a 19% increase in caseload. First of all, that doesn't justify a 160% increase in pay, and second, it shows it's ineffective. If that were truly effective at fighting crime, we simply wouldn't have seen the increase. Instead, we need to reroute that money to where it's useful.
I feel like we should give you a chance to answer that also. Do you wish to?
This year, Montour County is on track to have 300 new cases in the system. We have a murder. The next DA is going to have to try that if that murder trial does not occur in December as presently planned. We've had a couple bank robberies. We've had some snatch and grabs from a jewelry store. We've had a lot of drug-related crime. Crime is not decreasing. It's increasing. And I don't think that we want to be asleep just because we feel that there's not a need in our small county. We have a lot of influx of drugs and crimes from Williamsport, which isn't that far away. If you talk to the the Northumberland Montour Drug Task Force, they will tell you there's a lot of concern here, and we need to be vigilant, hyper-vigilant, to keep these people out. If you want a part-time DA to fight full-time crime, then I think that's a very bad approach.
Other questions? If not, we'll get you home early, and, well, not really early, but we'll have our closing comments. And as drawn beforehand, Republican Rebecca Warren will have our first closing statement.
Thank you to those of you who have attended this evening to hear our remarks, and thank you to the League of Voters, of which I am a member. You've done a wonderful job hosting this. At the end of the day, the only real issue in this election is very simple. Who is the most qualified person for the position? It will be a 4-year full-time position. Who is most qualified? I believe the answer, without a doubt, is Rebecca Warren. And the reason I say that is for several reasons. I have experience. I am the only candidate with prosecutorial experience. For years, I worked in Columbia County as an assistant district attorney, and for the last 2 years, I have worked here in Montour County as an assistant district attorney, unpaid. That was all free services, folks. I have the knowledge, wisdom, and insight to manage the affairs of the office and make prudent decisions. I utilize common sense. I have proven fiscal responsibility. Professionally, I built my own law firm from the ground up, and it's very profitable. Personally, I live within my budget. And volunteering, I've saved the county over $200,000 in the last several years. And that's before I even started working for you. I have the inner passion and drive for what it takes to make a great district attorney. I am organized and prepared. I have a very strong work ethic. I love the job. It's challenging, it's exciting, and it's important. I know the community. I'm a parent, a business owner, and an attorney. I represent the Prison Board, Mayberry Township, the Planning Commission, and as I said, I've worked as the Assistant District Attorney. I'm a member of Maria Joseph Manor Board of Trustees, the California Grange, the Neighborhood Watch, the Montour County Child Abuse Fatality and Near Fatality Review Team, and it seems I'm a permanent volunteer at the Montour DeLong Fairgrounds, which is our 4-H venue. Finally, for me, this is personal. I know what it's like for families to be victims of a crime. My brother and my father were victims of a double homicide in Luzerne County in 2006. The perpetrator had connections, and she was not going to be charged with the crimes. I was angry, I was frustrated, I was in disbelief, but I decided to act. Through my efforts, my persistence, and my voice, I had the woman prosecuted, and she pleaded guilty to 2 counts of homicide. My family finally had relief, justice, closure. It was a life-changing event for me, and one that I hope none of you ever have to experience. So when you ask me, why do I want to be Montour County's next district attorney? It's because of that. It's quite simple. I have a strong commitment and a strong concern. My voice is going to be the voice for all victims. I'm going to use my skills, my education, my training to do justice. Thank you.
And Democrat Timothy Bowers.
As we think back over the remarks from this evening, I think it's become clear that there are 3 key voting issues for the public. 1 is experience, 2, salary, 3, new ideas. Let's talk about experience for a moment. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm a Georgetown educated lawyer who's been in your community for 15 years. I have been entrusted with the primary legal affairs of the 5th class county next door. I have been entrusted with the legal affairs of your school district. I am accustomed to overseeing the legal needs of large organizations with sophisticated needs. I have litigated for 15 years in the courts of Pennsylvania, in the federal courts. Unlike my opponent, I have been lead counsel in a capital murder trial. I know what it's like to stand in front of a jury and discuss the weightiest possible issue you can address in court. I've done it before. I am fully prepared to do it again. I will use all of my experience in government, use all of my experience as a litigator to ensure that we have successful outcomes for our police. Let's move to the second key voting issue that all of you have before you. That's salary. I challenge my opponent to tell you what you're getting for $400,000 more than you're getting from me. And you didn't get an answer. What you got were not one, not 2, but 3 legalistic reasons why we can't cut the paycheck for this job. Oh, the Constitution prohibits it. Oh, it's the law and it can't be changed. And, oh, they tried before and it didn't work. Well, on that final reason, they tried before and it didn't work because, well, the leadership of the House canceled all the remaining legislative days. There was not even an opportunity to vote on it after it passed the Senate. We know that the governor hasn't funded this program. I've talked with 2 representatives on both sides of the aisle who promised me bipartisan support to take this down. I don't think we need to let a legalistic argument stand in the way of economic justice for the taxpayer. Now, you've also heard that if it's a part-time job, well, it won't get done. Ladies and gentlemen, my commitment to you is that the part-time designation is really about what the taxpayer pays. It's not what you get as service. This job gets done until it's done every day, every week, whether it takes 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 or 60, 80 hours that week. Police will have me 24/7. There will not be conflicts with my private practice. I'll manage it that way. You will have all the service that you need. Our law enforcement professionals will be backed up every minute of the day. And they're going to have that for $100,000 less a year. Let's move to the third key voting issue, and that's new ideas. The things that I propose are new in the sense that we haven't tried them because we've barely tried anything in this county for the longest time. We've had 2 options, incarcerate or probation. We know that incarceration and probation in Northumberland County had approximately 37% non-recidivism rates. Non-recidivism means they don't come back in the system. Once they put in treatment courts, they had 70% non-return rates. Ladies and gentlemen, my programs I propose are effective. You've not heard anything from the other side. I believe I'm your candidate, and I thank you for your vote.
Let's give them both a round of applause.